into the first question. So it says cracks in rocks widen as water freezes in them and thaws. How does this affect the surface of the earth? So when you've got like a crack in a rock and water gets down in it, it freezes. What does water do when it freezes?
Expands.
It expands. So what's it going to do to that crack in the rock?
Expand it.
It's going to make it get bigger and bigger. And if pieces of that break off, that's called what?
Weathering?
Weathering, yeah. So it's going to expose rocks to increased rates of erosion and weathering. It wouldn't affect the rate of soil formation. It wouldn't change the chemical composition of the rock. Why would it not change the chemical composition of rock?
Because it's not. Yeah, it's not acid.
Yeah, it's not like an acid, so it's not dissolving it, it's just water. So it's just expanding it and breaking off pieces of it because water expands when it freezes. And that same thing goes for D, it limits exposure of rocks to acid precipitation. We're not talking anything about acid precipitation in this, just water. Alright, 2, how can urbanization affect the local area? So urbanization is just making more of a city.
That's what that was?
Yes.
Oh my god, I got this right.
So, alright, so if you're making a city, so this one's not like a direct answer, it's kind of an indirect answer. You just got to think about it. Is it going to increase the number of invasive species in an area? No.
Yes.
Listen, I didn't know what that was.
It can decrease the risk of water pollution. Is it going to decrease water pollution if you add more people to it? It's going to increase it. Okay, it can increase the risk of flooding in an area.
No, because if you're adding more onto it, you're getting rid of.
What are you doing when you're making a city?
Like flattening out places and everything. But
Okay. What are you doing when you're flattening out places?
Making big buildings.
What do you have to do to the land first?
damn it.
No, we're making a city.
What?
Yeah, I
You
got
have
it.
to- What did you
Well,
say?
What do you do to land if you're making a city?
Clear it.
You clear it. When you clear it, what happens?
You have to like block up the ponds, the lakes, and the.
Okay, but what are you usually cutting down?
Trees.
Trees. Getting rid of plants. What do trees and plants do?
Oxygen.
That, yes. What else do they do?
Take away carbon emissions.
Yes. What else?
Help.
Think roots. What do their roots do?
soak
Produce
the
water.
and then you
I know suck up water.
Okay, they help soak up water, but what do they help do with the soil?
Nutrients.
They actually help hold the soil in place. Have you ever seen like a plant or something where it's kind of flooded around it and it'll still have like little roots, a little root ball, but the dirt's all washed away from it? So they actually help soil stay in place. So if you take away those, you do actually increase flooding. That's why I said this is an indirect answer. It's one you have to think about. And with this one, you probably would have to pick the best choice. So you have to go through and pick the best choice. So we already said it wouldn't affect invasive species, right? Because that's introduced species that would have to come with somebody doing something like actually putting it in the ecosystem. We said it wouldn't decrease water pollution, it would actually increase it. So if you didn't know about C, let's move on to D and look at it. It can decrease the need for natural resources.
Yes.
Decrease?
For now.
More people means they need more resources. So it actually increased the need for resources in the area. So it would, by process of elimination, have to be C. Because it would increase the flooding because you're clearing off all the plants, which are holding the dirt in place. Okay? Which is a farming technique that could improve the soil and the environment. Soil and environment.
Yeah, it's not the first one.
Okay, why is it not the first one?
Because that's putting more,
Carbon emissions. In
Yeah, so using fueled machines is not really going to be improving the environment. Turning the soil continuously is not really going to help anything. What's another one that we could say it's not?
It's not gonna be
soil with
inorganic.
salty water. Bless you.
Thank you.
Inorganic.
Okay, it's not going to be inorganic chemical fertilizers. That's going to be worse. Inorganic means what?
It's not.
It's basically a chemical fertilizer, right? Organic means it's something natural.
And then salty water.
It's not going to be salty water.
It's just gonna kill off all natural.
Yeah, so which one does it have to be by process of elimination? B. Okay, so these are like test taking techniques that I'm showing you, so you need to keep these in mind when you're actually going through. You need to go through every answer and be like, well, it's not that. Obviously, it's not that. And then if you get it narrowed down, then pick from the two best choices that you've narrowed it down from. Subsurface ocean currents continually circulate from warm waters near the equator to colder waters in other parts of the world. What is the main cause of these currents?
I don't think I got this right.
You know, I done that Quizlet, and this was the question I left on, and I got it wrong. So I
Okay,
was just hoping.
do you remember when we talked about the deep ocean current? The ocean conveyor belt? Like how it's hot and cold and it
Yeah.
pushes stuff up. Remember when I told you about upwelling where it pushes nutrients up from the bottom to the surface? All that has to do with hot and cold, which is basically just the density. What does cold water do? Cold water is going to do what?
Go high.
Go
Oh,
up,
no, it goes.
down,
Cold goes down, hot
goes
Yeah.
up.
goes up, just like with air. So that's a density thing. The hot and cold keeps it flowing because the hot water rises, cold water sinks, and it keeps that conveyor belt going.
Okay, I got a question.
Yeah.
Why, you know how you see like snow on top of a big old mountain?
Uh-huh.
How is it up there then? Like if the air's going up and it's closer to the
Well-
sun.
Because you remember the Earth has layers.
Yeah.
So the first layer that we're in, the troposphere, it decreases going up in elevation.
Oh
The
yeah.
temperature does. Then you get to the next layer, the stratosphere, which is the ozone layer. It gets hot. So after so many feet, it's a freezing zone.
Yeah.
So that's why you see like sunny areas and this mountain peak has snow on it because it's above the freezing line.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, 5. What is most responsible for the presence of groundwater in the air? So this is most responsible.
4. What was the answer?
Density.
Oh,
Density.
I got this right on the Quizlet. I know this is.
All right, 5. What is most responsible for presence of groundwater? And this says most responsible. That means the other things could contribute to it, but there's one that's better than the others. Most of your groundwater is going to come from what?
It comes from the surface water.
Yeah, surface water and rain, pretty much, right? Your precipitation. So which one is it?
B.
B.
I'm smart.
Yeah, it was that question that I figured out. This
Good.
is actually from the Quizlet for you.
All right. Which is the most common contamination source for freshwater resources? So how has it become contaminated? The best one out of these.
Wait.
What did you say, Brianna?
Right.
Runoff. So runoff, that's like if the water's running off of a farm and getting the fertilizer into the water. The water's running off of an area that's contaminated and it's running into the water. Digging wells can contaminate a little bit, but basically you're just tapping down into it. So it might make the water muddy for a little bit, but it's not really going to put a lot of stuff in it.
Yeah.
Melting glaciers is not really going to
It is giving it fresh water.
contaminate it. Lightning's not going to contaminate it.
What do you
7.
mean? Water always contaminates water. Does not have to use.
A community decides to upgrade its water purification and management systems. What lasting impact could this have on available freshwater? This is also one that's not a real direct one. You just kind of have to figure it out. All right, is it going to decrease the water demand?
No.
If people are, so we say this is the town of Andrews. So they're going to upgrade its water purification and management systems. So how they purify it and how they manage the water that they have. So is it going to decrease water demand?
Nope.
No, because people are still going to be demanding the same amount. It could cause a decrease in water levels.
No.
It's not really because they're not using a different amount. They're just purifying the water that they have better, and they're managing it because it says management systems. So that would be like our reservoir. They would be managing the reservoir better, and they would be purifying it better. It could cause an increase in waterborne diseases. If you're purifying it, is it going to increase diseases? No. So we know it's going to have to be D. It could cause an increase in fresh water supply, because if they're managing the reservoir the way that they should be, then you shouldn't be like losing any or it being wasteful or anything like that. Okay, 8. Which storm most likely develops as air masses interact with warm water in the Northwest Pacific Ocean? Which two of these can you rule out immediately? Blizzard and tornado. Okay, so you can rule out blizzard and tornado right away. Then we know that typhoon and monsoons are pretty much, well, not necessarily. Have you ever heard somebody say the term monsoon season?
No,
Never heard that?
I've never even.
I heard the monsoon game
Oh.
with Pittsburgh and Philadelphia.
No, I never heard of that.
You never heard of it?
Okay, so there is a monsoon season. So people that live in a specific area know that it's monsoon season, and it's not one particular storm. It's basically just this rainy time in that area. Monsoon is just like real heavy rains. Some of them can have a twist to them, like a hurricane kind of, but they stay in that area. It's just it's a shift in like it's a seasonal wind shift, and it starts blowing this warm, moist air to a certain area, and they just get this real rainy season. So,
Is that
I've heard people around here say it's like monsoon, like it's like a monsoon when it's like a downpour,
Yeah.
and it's just like a constant downpour. It's not necessarily typhoon, hurricane, tropical storm. All those are kind of the same. Monsoon's kind of different. Okay,
Ain't that like up north thing? Or like a western thing?
a monsoon.
Yeah.
No, I think it's more over near Asia, India, Asia. Over
Oh.
there, so. Okay, so we know it's like monsoon because that's a bunch of rain, basically. It's a bunch of different air masses, a bunch of different rain. So it's going to have to be typhoon. Typhoon, hurricane, tropical storm, they're all these cyclonic, which means they spin, storms. Typhoon is only in the Northwest Pacific. Any other place is called a hurricane. So,
Thank God we reviewed this all to fail.
nah. Which is associated with an increase of chlorofluorocarbons in the environment. Okay, so I went over this with you a while back. CFCs. This is the one I don't want you to get mixed up with greenhouse gas. CFCs is fluorocarbons. And what do they do? Do you remember what they do? They destroy something. A layer in the atmosphere.
Oh, the ozone?
Yes, they destroy
Let's go.
ozone layer.
Good job.
Where did they used to come from?
Oh, hairspray, wasn't it?
Yeah, aerosols.
Thank you, Grandma.
CFCs were a propellant for aerosols. They've now banned putting those in aerosols. I think in most of the countries. There might be some shady countries that still do it, but
Like Saudi Arabia.
anyway, so CFCs destroy the ozone layer. What is the purpose of the ozone layer?
They keep the UV rays out of you?
Yes, it filters UVs.
Ain't that the one that's healing, or is that like some other one?
Yes, this one is healing.
Is that the one we need to be healing? Like, is that the one
We do
the
need it
most?
to heal, because if we have too much UV coming in, what's it going to happen?
Cancer.
Yeah, it's going to cause skin cancer is the main thing.
You know, I never even heard of skin cancer since the 6th grade.
Alright, so this is the one that I don't want you to get mixed up with greenhouse gases, or the greenhouse effect.
There's a principle.
Remember, these two things are totally different. Ozone layer is CFCs destroy it. It filters UV rays. Greenhouse effect is from what gas?
Methane.
Well, it can be methane. But the main one is carbon dioxide. So that's from burning fossil fuels. So the greenhouse effect, global warming, whatever, term they use.
Well, I just lost my pencil.
That's CO2 or CH4, that's methane. CO2 is the main one. That's
Oh,
just, Landon, shh. That's just CO2 getting up into the upper layer of the troposphere. Remember, we got troposphere, stratosphere, mesosphere, thermosphere, exosphere. Right? So this is going on in which layer?
Ozone.
The ozone layer is actually called the stratosphere. And then this, all weather, greenhouse effect, where we fly planes, everything is in the first troposphere. Yeah,
Oh, let's go. Not really, but yeah.
there we go. All right, so 9 is, it's not the upper atmosphere. It's A. 9 is A. Increase in health risk associated with UV radiation. Now remember, B, C, and D. Methane. Well, B and D, methane and acid precipitation are from fossil fuels. So acid rain, methane, or carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, those are going to be from burning fossil fuels. Alright, 10. Which natural phenomenon occurs as a result of Earth rotating on its axis? There's only one of those, really, that it could. If it's rotating on its axis. Yeah, day and night. Now, if it said tilt.
Yeah, that's what I was confused.
If it says tilt, because of the tilt of the rotation of the axis. Are y'all listening to me?
Yeah, I am.
Okay. Tilt would be which one?
Seasons.
Seasons are because of the tilt. Remember, we got a 23.5 degree tilt. So we got this slight tilt. So it rotates like that, and whatever side's exposed to the sun the most is going to be what season is in place.
I second guessed myself, and then I read the question. I'm like,
So this one just said Earth rotating on its axis, so that's giving us day and night. If it says tilt, that would be seasons. So 10 is D.
One just be like.
Sat there and had a discussion quietly about it. We were like, okay, it's either C or D.
Yeah.
And I was like, wait.
Yeah. The key word for seasons is going to be tilt, or it'll say a 23.5 degree tilt or rotation on the
Wouldn't it be
axis.
like fall or something for us?
What is that?
Like if the sun's here,
Yeah.
like if we're rotating toward the sun, then it'll be spring. But when it kind of shifts, then that'll be like spring or fall. And then when we're away from it, that'll be winter. Alright, 11. Urban City X has been referred to as an urban heat island because it tends to be warmer than the surrounding rural areas. The report below lists changes that have occurred in 1 year. Heat island just means that it's not necessarily an island. It just means it's this little isolated area that's a lot hotter than its surrounding areas. What's going to make a city hotter?
lights.
More pavement.
Lights can definitely do it, but
More pavement.
if we're just thinking like generally, like not like during the day or whatever, like sunlight is coming down
Solar panels.
and it's warming up the, what did Landon say?
Pavement.
Pavement.
Especially
Pavement is
black
what
pavement.
color?
Black.
Black. So it is absorbing heat. So if you have all these paved, and it says in here that the
I got it right though.
public transportation increased, 8 roads were repaved. Now, if they concrete the roads, what is that going to do?
One shit off heat.
It will actually reflect some heat. So that's why sometimes in the cities you see roads that are concreted. They're trying to deflect heat away from the city because concrete is what color?
Black.
Gray.
Concrete.
Oh, gray.
Oh, concrete's like a gray.
Light. It's like a light gray, usually, right? So that's going to reflect more heat than absorb, like pavement. Pavement's black, so it's going to absorb.
Show some other nature. Just paint my pavement white.
All right, so 11 is D.
Students, teachers, pardon the interruption. If you ride bus 31, bus 31 will not run this afternoon. It will not run tomorrow morning, or it will not run tomorrow afternoon. So if you need to call and get a ride, at the end of third block, please come to the office, and call home. Do not use your cell phone to call home. Come to the office,
Well, for just
and we'll
averages.
make arrangements for you to get a ride home. Thank you.
Alright, 12. What long-term impact could the destruction of large areas of forest have on the earth? So we're cutting down trees. What's that going to do?
Get rid of oxygen. And
Get rid of oxygen and increase carbon dioxide because they're taking in carbon dioxide. So 12 is B. 13. Why is it important to conserve biodiversity? Biodiversity is just a lot of life on Earth. So all kinds of insects, plants, everything, animals.
Stability of ecosystems.
Yeah, to increase the stability of ecosystems during environmental changes because you need all of that stuff if there is an environmental change. If something does die off, you need other insects that birds can eat, or you need other birds that something else can eat. So everything depends on the other. Okay, here we go. 14. How does the tilt of the Earth's axis affect the seasons?
Deflect the harmful rays of radiation.
By changing the
I
amount
thought
of
it was
direct
no.
solar energy.
It's
reaching
A.
the
Changing
Earth.
the amount of direct
Bam!
solar energy reaching the surface of the Earth. Because
What?
it's okay. All right. So remember, it's
What
the
do you think
direct
about it?
the direct sunlight. So if we're pointed toward the sun, then it's going to be what season? Summer. If we're away from it, it's
Fall.
winter. And then the ones where we're kind of in between is spring and fall. If you're on the equator, so the sun's right here, the equator, it doesn't really matter if it's spinning a little bit because it's still getting direct sunlight. It's still going in a direct ray to it. It's not getting this deflected sunlight. Because if we have sunlight coming in right here, that's direct sunlight. It's a direct ray, so it's going to be more intense. If you're having to deflect the ray, then it's losing some intensity.
I like fall the best. This one's
So, the equator does not have seasons. Okay, it's always warm. It's always hot there. Okay,
We're so close.
15. How could the introduction of non-native species of plant affect an ecosystem in North Carolina?
I put B.
I put A, but I don't know if that's right.
Okay, so we're introducing a non-native species. What's another word they could use for that?
A local species? No. A foreign.
Starts with an I.
Invasive.
Invasive. So if you see non-native or invasive, or you could see the two actually combined, an invasive, non-native, they can kind of interchange those. Even though invasive means that it's drastically taking over, non-native can mean that it can take over, or it can just be introduced into the ecosystem but not really take over. It can just kind of fit in. Okay, so the main thing with non-native or invasive species is it basically takes over an ecosystem. So which one would it be?
See.
Yeah, it could take over the habitats of native plant species.
Bam. No. Bam. Bam. Bam.
And we've seen that with kudzu, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so don't ever second guess yourself. Yeah, I have to tell that to Ethne all the time. She will pick the right answer and go back and change it to the wrong one. So
I'm like that
when you're
now.
taking your test, go with your first instinct and move on. I don't even want you to go back and check it. Okay? Alright. Which change would best aid a farmer in making the transition from conventional farming techniques to more sustainable farming techniques?
I put A.
Okay, it wants to know the best one. So the best farming method on here is what?
See.
Yeah, rotating your crops. Because certain crops deplete certain minerals from the soil. So I don't know if you ever noticed, like on that airport straight down through there, like one year this will be soybeans and over here it'll be
Yeah.
soybeans, and then they switch it and then this is corn and this is soybeans. So they do that because they're rotating the crops.
I might have learned that from last year. Or you talked about or something like
Yeah.
that.
So the A, reduce the ratio of essential elements in the fertilizer. If they're essential elements, I think you pretty much would have to have them in fertilizer. So you have to have, what's the main thing in fertilizer? Main element.
Manure.
Element. Remember that big word I taught you in 8th grade science, eutrophication? With water. It was with water. It's fertilizer getting into water. What's the element that it's putting into it?
Growing stuff.
Element from the periodic table. Okay. Nitrogen. Remember nitrogen? When you get too much nitrogen in the water, it causes algae blooms. So, nitrogen is your main element in fertilizer. That can be natural, like in manure. It can be artificial, like in chemical fertilizers.
Cow manure is actually the worst manure to use.
Really?
Yeah, it burns.
Okay.
If you don't use it.
17. Which would most likely cause a reduction in the amount of coal and natural gas on Earth? We're reducing the amount of coal. This is not reducing fossil fuels being burned. It's reducing our coal and oil reserves.
I put C.
How would you reduce coal? We're taking away from the coal and oil reserves.
Be A? No.
Yeah, I put A.
I put A. Doesn't mean it's right. That's probably
Why
not.
should it not be? Why should it be B?
Okay, so A says a continual increase in the amount of pollution. Yeah, you are going to get increased pollution, but it's because more people are using up the coal. Okay, so that's why these questions like this say most likely or best choice. So the more people you have, the more coal and natural gas they're going to use. Yes, that would increase the pollution, but you have to have the people using it first.
So,
B?
So B.
B. Okay, 18. Which is an effect of lower levels of solar radiation striking Earth. So less sunlight hitting the Earth. What's going to happen?
Decrease in rate.
Yeah, you're going to decrease photosynthesis because photosynthesis runs off of sunlight. So if you're not getting a lot of sunlight, then your photosynthesis is going to decrease. 19. Which will most likely form when a movement along a plate boundary forces a landmass to be pulled apart?
I put D.
Wouldn't it be oceanic trench or whatever it is?
I put C.
It's not. I wouldn't go with that one because it's not talking about it being underwater.
Okay.
So I would go with continental rift.
Uh,
The island arcs, those are usually caused by something called a hotspot. Like Hawaii, those are hotspots. So it's places that are constantly bubbling up on the floor of the ocean and it's causing all those islands to form. Mountains are usually when plate boundaries push up and then you get the rift valleys like when they're pulling apart.
I got 6 out of 19 wrong.